So, good evening all. You have the Historic Preservation Special Meeting. Today is Monday, October 17th, and it is 6 o'clock p.m. We have a call to order and a roll call, please.
Chairman Bruce Trimber.
Present.
Vice Chairman Jesse Solomon.
Present.
Commissioner Mary Boxbell.
Present.
Commissioner Carrie Schmelter.
Present.
Commissioner Carletha Frazier.
Present.
Commissioner Josh Simpson.
So we're missing one.
Commissioner Evan Goodwin.
So we're missing two, but we have a quorum, correct? Okay, so we're good with a quorum. Notice regarding adjournment. The Historic Preservation Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 unless authorized by a majority vote of the commission members present. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 may be continued to the next regular meeting or a special meeting date as determined by the commission members. Notice regarding public comments. Every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall address the chairman in speaking, avoid disrespect to the commission, staff, and other members of the meeting. State your name and address when speaking for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And for those who have comments pertaining to the agenda items before the board commission this evening, you'll have the opportunity to comment before the board commission votes on the item. You are welcome to hold your comments until then and voice your comments at that time. And it looks like we have one individual for comments. Adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as written?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Looking for a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Looks like the agenda passed. Adoption of minutes, we're not adopting any minutes. Public comments that are not on the agenda, Carrie, no public comments. So we're on to our meeting, and it's the old business. And I believe Glenn, or is it Kevin?
Yes, sir. Hey, good evening, council members, commissioners, excuse me. Kevin Eicher, Director of Growth Management. I'm just going to stand up just briefly to kind of set the tone for this evening, just to remind you why we're here this evening. This is a special meeting. I think there were some concerns at the previous meeting, and unfortunately I could not attend. I do apologize for that. I just wanted to remind you, and Glenn is going to provide a little bit more in-depth review of this, but this evening we're here for the certificate of appropriateness for the final product of the Deer Tongue Warehouse, future Bluffton Gullah Heritage Museum. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that as we were going through this process back in February, you guys approved the relocation of the structure. So in that purview, the structure is being moved. The actual process of how that was going to happen was not part of that purview. So this evening, the focus is on what is that final product? The final product, and then using the review criteria that you have in the staff report that's provided at the previous meeting as well as at this meeting. So as you're going through that mindset, as you're reviewing it, discussing it amongst yourselves, that you remember that you're using the review criteria to base your decision on that. So with that, I'm going to let Glenn come up, do his presentation, and then be able to assist if there's any questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, before we get started, I do want to point out one of our commissioners, Carrie Schmelter, was not here at the last meeting, but she's here now. She's reviewed all the materials from the last meeting, including today's staff report, and she's up to speed.
Yes.
Chair, could you state that?
I apologize. We had just got back from out of the country and I missed last meeting, but I did watch the video of the last meeting and read everything in it and up to speed.
Up to speed, very good. Thank you. So that goes in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so tonight this is part two of a two-part series looking at 1255 May River Road. Just to remind you, we're speaking about 1255 May River Road, the contributing resource currently known as the Deer Tongue Warehouse. Here's the zoning and location maps. Current conditions, this was as of October 3rd of property. To take you on a little bit of a review of what happened previously, February 2nd, I stood here at the podium and presented a COFA application for a demolition to allow the demolition of 4 non-contributing structures on the property, along with a partial demolition of the contributing resource, known as the Deertrong Warehouse, and the relocation of the remaining structure to the western end of the property. At that meeting, HPC approved the COFA with the following conditions. One, that only the non-historic portion of the contributing resource building was to be demolished. That's the northern part, which had been recently used as the kitchen. And then furthermore, the HPC determined that the 1945 era historic contributing structure be relocated to the western side of the property, subject that it be located parallel to May River Road and sited at least 10 feet from the side property line. The item in gray, I've intentionally left out, that just deals with the demolition of the non-contributing structures out on the property. So that's what happened in February. To give you some visuals, the partial demolition of the Deertrong Warehouse was the removal of that northern portion outlined where the red line is. And this schematic gives you an idea of the relocation part of the COFA from solid blue on the right to the dotted line blue on the left. So that's what was approved. Jumping forward, October 5th, we presented an application, the current application, to allow the reassembly and rehabilitation of the Deertrong Warehouse with the existing 378 square foot front porch and the construction of a new rear addition of approximately 348 square feet to the structure now located at 1255 May River Road. Might be helpful every once in a while to do a review. When we talk about rehabilitation, it's not just a word I made up. The Secretary of Interior has devised this following definition. Rehabilitation is the act or process of making possible a compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, or additions while preserving those portions or features which convey its historical, cultural, or architectural values. The current application is to rehabilitate the Deertrong Warehouse. I gave you a historic photograph on the left, and I gave you some elevations on the right. You're looking at the top right, which is the front elevation, the proposed front elevation, and then below that is the rear elevation showing that addition that's proposed. Proposed side elevations, I'm giving you a comparison from what it looks like now to what the proposed will look like. On the top left, which is currently the eastern elevation, and then as it's drawn out for proposed, and conversely, the western elevation on the other side with the proposed below that. The HPC actions tonight, you're to consider the 8 review criteria set forth in the UDO section 318.3 when assessing an application for a certificate of appropriateness. Furthermore, you're authorized to take the following actions. You can approve the application as submitted, you can approve the application with conditions, or you may deny the application as submitted by the applicant. In the staff report, I've given you a lot of pages of various criteria and evaluations. I've highlighted these 6 which you need to concentrate on this evening. The first one is any materials which require replacement will be identified in the building permit drawings for compliance. That's under section 318.3A. Also under 318.3A, actually that's the only thing from 318.3A that I want to mention. Additional information provided for materials for railings and balustrades, rear doors and soffit. These were materials that were not specified in the documents. We're asking for approval or further information. The applicant has since specified that the railings were going to be powder-coated aluminum. You heard that material mentioned in the previous two COFAs that we saw last time for the other two buildings on the property. They're just asking for the same material to be used here. That's something that you will have to determine whether or not it's an appropriate deviation for that material. Rear doors and soffit. Under 515.6K, the fence height needs to be reduced. And then, as with the other two COFAs that you heard related to this project, all conditions for the development plan will need to be addressed. The development plan will need to be reviewed. The subdivision must be approved and recorded. And any proposed future signage will require a separate site feature HD application. I've included in red those things that the applicant said that they will already comply with. However, since there's been no updated drawings, should you approve this application, you're going to need to specify that those conditions also be met. Are there any questions that you have at this moment?
Any questions? Any of the board members?
No.
No? Okay.
No questions? Okay, I understand that there's public comment on this project.
It looks like we do have one public comment, is that correct? And if you could come state your name and limit your discussion to 3 minutes, and also only one person at the podium at a time.
Joan Hayward.
Good evening. Joan Hayward, 95 Boundary Street. Hold on. Sorry. A few verifiable comments and questions. Facts. Verifiable facts. January 6, 2022, Cranston Engineering wrote, "It is our understanding that the intent is to lift and relocate the building on the same property. We do not foresee any unusual or inordinate risk to achieving this goal," unquote. 2.5, HPC approved relocation and rehabilitation. 6.6, applicant submitted relocation, renovation, and addition. 8.6, another application was submitted for new construction, rehabilitation, or renovation, addition, relocation, or demolition. 9.5, HPC approves relocation and reconstruction on piers of the structurally unsound joiner building. 10.5, HPC denied relocation and reconstruction of Deer. 10.11, Bluffton Town Council passed and adopted the public art policy, and tonight we're meeting for reassembly and rehabilitation. So what do the players actually want? Have they been influenced by the structurally unsound joiner application and decision that you made? Terry Sleece on the new art policy says people that are coming in may not necessarily understand the history of the community and what it makes to be great. Is architecture art? Yes. Architectural Digest 4/4/18. We are demolishing, sympathetically dismantling, or reassembling a piece of history that is an art form in Bluffton in 1945. The Deer Tongue Warehouse is a craftsman creation to store fragrant deer tongue leaves to be shipped to perfumeries. We are using ATAX dollars to buy new art forms and demolishing or dismantling our historical art forms. What is a contributing structure? Is it a building that was constructed more than 50 years ago that retains the original style and architectural qualities that contribute to the historic character of the neighborhood? Precedent: Graves House, structurally sound, relocated to piers. Joiner House, structurally unsound, reconstruction to piers. Deer Tongue Warehouse, structurally sound, relocated to May River Road on piers. The doctor's office, structurally unsound, dismantled, rebuilt to look nothing like it was. June 2020, HPC goes against town recommendation to deny application of the Bridge Center. To the owner, Mr. Waterston, who's here, please do the correct thing and follow through with your original intention found in the January 6th engineering report. To HPC, think, study, learn, process, make an informed decision for the community, take your time, call another meeting. Thank you.
No other comments, Melissa? Okay. I guess what we're looking for is, does anyone have discussion in regards to this project? And Glenn, do we have the applicant?
The applicant's are here.
If the applicant wants to come and talk, again, one person at a time to the podium.
Hello, Amanda Denmark with Pierce Scott Architects. I know there's a lot of back and forth and concerns about structural, and I don't know if Jake Evanson with Cranston Engineering emailed you or anything, but he emailed us this morning a letter, and I can let you guys have this copy. I can read the other.
And who is Jake?
So he is the structural engineer that did the first assessment report, the one that everyone keeps.
Okay, yes, thank you.
And he says that your request would review the structural conditions assessment and code study report prepared by our office for subject building dated January 6th, 2022, as well as the currently proposed plans and designs under consideration. While there's a greater clarity provided in the proposed end usage of this building and other factors may now be present, the conclusions in our professional opinion stated in this report remain unchanged. 2 points of clarification with regard to the original report may, however, be used. First, all work performed by this firm and associated opinions and conclusions are strictly limited to a consideration of the structure. It is beyond our scope and expertise to evaluate or consider any life safety or code specification requirements such as accessibility, egress, fire protection, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and energy or other requirements. Second, our opinion is based on what we interpret the applicable building codes to require for the structure of this situation. However, International Existing Building Code 2018 Section 1201.5 allows the code official to ultimately determine if any unsafe conditions exist, and if so, they must be remedied. Our office has not received any official determinations regarding this property. Therefore, any future decisions have not been considered in our opinion. Thank you for allowing us to provide continued assistance for your engineering needs. Please let me know if you have any questions concerning this letter. So it's stating the same kind of thing like what we were trying to explain the last time, is that this was a structural report of, yes, if the building would be picked up and moved, but then after that happens, can it be used for this commercial use? Because we have to then bring it up to code. And in order to bring it up to code, there are other parts and pieces that go along with that. And you would, for this particular one, we would have to rebuild a framework to take pieces off, to be able to waterproof and put things back on. We have insulation. I'll just kind of go down a list of in reconstructing the structure and moving the structure. So both would need a foundation. Both would need a ramp. The porch would have to be rebuilt anyway. It was in one of the earlier staff reports from conceptual, I think, review. The roof would require some additional strapping, collar ties for stability, both situations. They both would need new windows and doors. Both remove the metal siding and the window door for flashing, for the vapor barrier, and for the insulation. It's both the same thing. You'd need hurricane tie downs. You'd need new mechanical, new plumbing, new electrical. So all of it's the same, except for now, instead of just, if we picked it up and moved it, we'd have to take this all apart to then put it back together. And so I think that's where the confusion is of, with the structural, is yes, it's a building that, sure, it's standing up and it can be moved, but in order to bring it up to code and be code compliant, there are other things and other factors that have to happen. We also, on advisement of staff, from the conceptual meeting, have hired a firm, Repurpose Savannah, and they specifically deconstruct old historic buildings. They catalog and survey them all and photograph them. So I have Katie with Repurpose Savannah. She could come up here and kind of explain that process so you can understand what the sympathetic dismantling we're talking about is. So, Katie, could you come up?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So, other than it being probably more cost-effective to dismantle and rebuild it, it could be picked up, moved, and brought up to code.
It could be picked up, moved.
And then brought up
taken
to code.
apart and put back together. and
So
brought up-
it's
Why would you have to take it, can't you just build the, add walls, put the insulation in, doctor it up, you're gonna change the doors and windows anyway. Add your strapping and add to it,
We'd have to waterproof it, so we'd have to take all the panels and everything off of it.
right?
So you have
So
to,
you're taking it apart, so why would you move it and take it apart versus take it apart and put it back together? You're putting it back together anyway.
what you're saying is you're removing
But if,
a goodly part of it, even if you did move it in the whole building, you're
Yeah.
still removing a number of the components once it's moved, but then what's the,
And two, in codes,
I guess you
hurricane
could-
codes, we have lumber, we don't know that we can strap to this old,
then you add, you fur it up, or you fur it up, and
so
do
which
it, I mean,
means you're adding
cost.
all new, well, I'm not worried about that, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the materials and how this is gonna be put back together, so you would be removing
But you would
a
be,
lot.
but you'd still be keeping the integrity of the original building as you pick it up and move it, and then you take the drywall off, doctor it up, put the insulation in and put it back on.
It's not that easy, but,
you'd have to remove the exterior too.
yeah, you have to,
Because you have to
dry it
waterproof.
in.
Right,
You
okay.
can't just build new walls inside and call it a day, it doesn't work that way. So you have to literally take off everything off of the exterior perimeter to be able to waterproof it, flash it, put insulation in it, for hurricanes, because they have to tie down from the roof to the ground, or to the foundation. So there's just a lot that has to be done. So we're trying to take out an extra step of having to, if we're taking it apart anyway, why can't we take it apart and move it? So it's just the method versus, it's gonna look the exact, it's the same thing. It's the same footprint, it's the same exterior, it's the same height, it's the same volume, I mean, everything's the same. The porch, the spacing, the column, all of it's the same. It's all the same materials, so. But I would like you to listen to her, because their company is fabulous with the things that they do and how they take great pride and care in materials and dealing with historic structures and, so, Kate.
If you could step back. Hi, and state your name and,
My name is Katie Fitzhugh. I'm the Director of Deconstruction for Repurpose Savannah. So, as Amanda said, we do focus in deconstruction of historic structures. We've been a part of numerous projects in the city of Savannah. I've personally worked on about 15. We've done selective deconstruction, which is just taking out, additions but leaving the historic structure. We have done entire structural removal, but we do focus in while you're sometimes losing the ability to physically interact with a historic structure, the process of which we go about this is documentation. So on the jobs that I do in Savannah, I do partner with a company called Shamrock Drones. We 3D scan every structure before any work begins. We 3D scan it during the project, and then you see the ultimate result when it's finished. It sounds like this project needs a lot of documentation, part of it, so we do it very carefully, very slowly, and in lieu of traditional demolition, where you just bulldoze it, crush it up, and you lose the majority of the history and all of the materials, the physical materials, we salvage them and or save them nicely off for reuse in potential other projects.
so as we're talking about this project, we're talking about reassembly and rehabilitation. When you're doing this, as Amanda just stated, when you're completing this project and it's done, what's going to happen when I walk to that building and see it? Am I going to have a sense that it's the same building? Is that what you're striving for?
Well, so my part of this project is deconstruction.
One at a time.
Oh, excuse me. is deconstruction. So while I will go in and take photos of the exterior, correct, right? The paneling, I will mark on my camera, or my photo, excuse me, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when it goes to be reattached,
So all the panels,
it'll be perfectly preserved. Each piece will be taken off exactly. So essentially what we're doing, excuse me, we are unbuilding the panels. So just in this area, so that they can be used in the exact same order that they were deconstructed.
just curiously, are they doing this type of process in Savannah?
Yes. I actually just did a job where we took a structure apart and then it is being moved. It is extensively marked, noted. Every joist will go back in, part sistered with the exact joist it came out from. It'll be moved and reconstructed and utilized. So while we are taking it out of its original context, you're not losing the structural integrity or like the historical integrity because it is going to go live on in a new location. But like I said, essentially deconstruct or unbuilding it to rebuild. So this is something that the city of Savannah does. Actually, the city of San Antonio has recently hired me to go and train 50 contractors in the art reform of deconstruction because they just passed an ordinance there. So I leave on Saturday to train quite a few people. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yes. So.
Does anyone have?
How do you determine when you deconstruct, or do you reconstruct it as well?
I don't do the reconstruction. That is outside of my pay grade, but I do deconstruction. So
Okay.
people hire me in lieu of demolition.
Okay, gotcha.
Or if you need selective, slow, loving work done, so you can reuse those materials. So
So you're providing the footprint for the contractor to replace the material back, is that correct? Or are you actually doing it?
I'm not a part of the rebuilding process. May I trade out? Is that all right?
Yeah, so if.
Okay.
Yeah.
She is just merely reconstructing the building.
Okay.
Shoreline construction are the builders and will be putting it back according to her plan.
According to her plan, so she's
Yes.
giving them the guidelines on what they have,
Yeah.
how to.
Yes, she's giving them all of the documentation that, in
Okay.
order to put it all back together.
Thank you.
How do you determine if portions or pieces are reusable or not?
Absolutely. So usually when I determine that, if it's dry rotted out and it just crumbles in your hand, probably not going to reuse that one. If you visually see termite damage, also you probably wouldn't want to use that as well. Through the process of deconstructing other structures, like in the city of Savannah, we have a large-scale lumberyard where you can replace those lost materials with like materials. So if you're restoring a Victorian house and you need an 1880 era antique heart pine 2x4, you can't go to Home Depot and just buy that, correct? So you need to source that like material, and that is what we as Repurpose Savannah in deconstruction and in partnership with our lumberyard can provide communities.
So if there's panels or something missing that has to be replaced, you're not going to purchase something that's shiny and bright, but you're actually looking for something in that same era?
Well, so that's outside my purview on this project. I'm just saying, we will go through the documentation and we will note what is lost due to termite damage or to dry rot or whatever. So it's just a part of my overall process. We do it for every single job, mark out what we lose, and
Are the conditions for the Deer Tongue warehouse comparable to conditions of projects you've worked on in Savannah?
I've worked on new builds all the way down to 1850s National Registrar structures. So that's a very broad question for me to answer.
That makes sense.
Thank you. Any comments, discussion points for her? Thank you.
Thank you all.
And good, hey, congratulations on teaching more people how to do this.
Thanks. My crew is all females, and so now I'm going to go train 50 guys.
You can do it. Amanda, do you have any additional?
As far as you're talking about the metal panels, we're gonna try and use as much stuff that's already on site, because there's already like several buildings there, and there's metal and there's wood and there's different things, so we're gonna try and reuse if we need to infill.
And let's talk about that. You are taking some of the other buildings apart, but you're actually going to be utilizing some of that extra material, just in case, I take it?
Yes,
I mean, it's
yeah, we're
be
gonna
a-
save, like I said, especially the metal panels because of the Deer Tongue building. We wanna make sure and have that on site just in case anything, like she found anything that wasn't.
But you're gonna actually have it from the site.
Yes, yeah. So we wouldn't really have to source that material per se, but.
Any other discussion for her?
I guess I'm
Questions?
just trying to understand why it's better to deconstruct and reconstruct than move and get it up to code.
We would have to
I
deconstruct
know that, but I
again.
mean, it can be done
You could technically lift it up and move it over,
and get it up to code.
take it apart,
Yep, I
and
understand.
put it back together. So if you're gonna take it apart and put it back together, why wouldn't you do that one time? Why would you?
I mean,
Do
you
it
could do it
twice.
in pieces that when it's been moved, do section, I just
But that's still
asking,
deconstructing. I mean,
well,
so there's,
What you're saying, I guess I'm trying to visualize this, is if you were to take this, move it here, it's here, but in a sense, I'm doing the same thing in this
Yes.
location that I'd be doing in this location,
yes,
just the fact that,
just to make, just say
but I
that.
have a new foundation, I have a new, everything that I'm needing to provide, and it's being placed there, but I just have this broken box that needs to be, I'm trying to get, clarity for everyone to say, okay, now I got a broken box over here, but I gotta take the whole doggone thing apart because I gotta do hurricane, I gotta,
Gotta make him
I
happy.
gotta make him happy, and he's not gonna approve anything, especially being a commercial, that's just, by the way, I'm pointing to a gentleman here,
Richard
he's our,
First.
code enforcement officer. I don't know if that's a proper terminology, but.
Close enough.
So it has to meet code, it has to meet today's code. There's
So we're
no,
not talking about just structural, that's the whole key, is it's not only structural doesn't make it code.
internally, electrical, plumbing.
It's every part of the building.
Can I just ask, so almost every historic contributing structure in Old Town Bluffton, this could be a process that's utilized to,
I would say it's case specific, I can't speak for every project.
okay.
I mean, every project's in a unique, different situation, so that's hard to speak to.
I guess it's just, I think that there is, as far as a building's historic integrity, there is a difference between repairing something and trying to work with what you have and just completely building a new frame. I mean, something that's, the more that you're able to keep, it's a more historic representation of that structure. I guess I just am concerned about that and the ramifications of that long-term for this commission, I guess is my,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please, thank you.
I'd also like to remind everyone that this is a contributing structure in the local district. So town council establishes what buildings are contributing structures. So this structure will continue to be a contributing structure until such time that town council chooses that it's not a contributing structure. So I just want to remind you that because they're doing this work does not mean that it loses this status. The status is there. So as they take this apart, they put it back together in this new location. It's looking the exact same. You've all seen the renderings of what it's going to look like. It will still have that contributing structure status to it. So just note that until such time that it doesn't.
That's only for, that's deemed by town council, but would any preservationist agree with that?
I mean,
You could.
Town council,
Yeah,
the
you don't have a
governing,
mic, do you?
You know, it's,
It's 6th of February.
yeah.
is any
So I'll-
preservation, I mean, town council, that's more of like a,
No, if I could, sorry, Heather Cullen, Assistant Town Manager. Right now, it is within our UDO, our Unified Development Ordinance, as far as what the criteria is. So that's set by town council. So it does not require, as the code's written now, any sort of preservationist or additional layer of review. That's set by town council.
Right.
So, and then just based on your discussion, I would just like to remind y'all, when you do get to a motion this evening, that if you could just bring it back to the review criteria as far as whatever additional conditions or wherever that decision does follow. Like I said, we're following the ordinance that we have in place at this time, and we do not have specific criteria related to how you move it. That may be something we look at in the future or move forward with as far as refining the UDO that we do on a regular basis. But that's just what I wanted to highlight, just the UDO criteria. The contributing structures, as it's written now, is established by town council as far as amending that list. It's essentially like a rezoning.
right, but if it's taken apart and put back together in the way that they're describing, and I know you probably can't answer this, but would outside preservationists, I mean, town council is not qualified to be, it's just going through the motion.
Right, and this is probably a
Is
very
anyone
technical
else going to
question.
consider it? Because if this is a development board or commission, I would say go. But it's the preservation commission and I just can't, right, I mean, what's the point if it's not being preserved?
Right, I understand, but I will say relocation is an option that's approvable by the commission, which was done, and the structure has been moved several times. Again, we don't get into the detail in our ordinance as it is today on how that's done. So is that done in one piece? Is that done in 10 pieces? Is that done in 100 pieces? That's not codified in the ordinance today. So that's really,
So this is allowed by the present UDO in the manner that is being presented to us. We're not looking for any variances or changes or anything, so the UDO is written in a manner that allows us to have a reassembled and rehabilitation of this project per the UDO.
correct. There's
We're not looking
only,
for any,
the only deviation they're requesting is on the deviation on the materials for the railings, which you've dealt with material deviations before, so that's standard. But otherwise, according to the staff report that we've analyzed, it meets the criteria. And then obviously it's ultimately up to you, so I'm not trying to steer you in one direction or not, just like I said, if you could bring it back to the UDO review criteria, and just wanted to answer your question about the contributing structures. That help? Any other questions for me while I'm up here?
so it sounds like we have a discussion in regards to the reassembly, and when is the reassembly done?
Well,
I guess is one question that I'm looking at is it done? If you're reassembling it, isn't that basically what we have to do even if we were to move this box over?
Well, that's what I don't understand, why
It's-
it's
still has
needing to
to
be
be-
taken apart in so many pieces just to be moved, because is that how it was moved prior?
I would have to defer that. I'm not sure how it was moved prior.
Perhaps I can shed a little bit of light on the subject. So standard practice in preservation world for moving a historic structure can be done in basically 3 different ways. You can pick it up and move it basically intact, one piece. The Deertime Warehouse was moved that way at one point going up Calhoun Street on the truck. I showed you that picture back in February. You can take it apart and move it in 2 pieces or 3 pieces. I recently watched a video of them moving a house where they cut the house in 2 and moved it in 2 pieces. You can take it apart like a giant jigsaw puzzle and put it back together again in multiple pieces. That option is what they're proposing here. So they're going to take apart and put it back together on the different part of the same lot. So does that?
So that's allowed by,
So those are accepted.
that's an accepted practice.
Those are accepted practices.
I guess Amanda is the one, why is it having to be taken apart into so many pieces just to move it?
So that's really outside the scope of this COFA.
Well, I'm just, yeah.
I mean, I hear your question, but again, that's just out of the scope of what we're looking at
Well, I
here.
guess if you, but that would change maybe my view if you had to take it apart anyway, then I can see the point, but,
But what are we gained by that? Because we're still taking it apart. We're just,
well, I don't think you need to take it. They moved it from, to make where it is now on a truck. I mean, they're moving it, what, 200 feet in the same lot?
if you could step to the, Robert, this is Richardson. Thank you. Richardson, thank you for the input and hello. If you could state who you are. Some people might not know who you are, but I know who.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the commission. As y'all know, Richardson LaBruce with Bingham, Mellon, Brooks and LaBruce, here on behalf of the HPC. So my role here is to assist in guiding y'all in making a decision. Why I stood up here and wanted to come speak was just to kind of, for lack of a better term, synopsize what's been said, or what at least I've heard, and hopefully be able to assist with y'all rendering a decision. So there are questions about, the relocation of this building, and the certificate of appropriateness that's before you. What I've heard Commissioner Box-Bell state and others is, well, why do you have to disassemble to relocate? And I don't think that's necessarily what the applicant is saying. The applicant began this process, it's my understanding, looking through the documents, with the relocation of an intact building. That was the intended plan back in February. And the documents, the Cranston report, was largely in support of that. Afterwards, in discussions with the building code officials and in discussions with town staff, there was a determination that much of the building would have to be disassembled, taken apart, and then put back together to comply with building code. And as we've heard, they're gonna have to take off the exterior to get the weatherproofing on there. They're gonna have to, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect, I'm probably saying the wrong words, but they're gonna have to rip out the drywall, the interior. They're going to have to do substantial structural changes to it, whether it's pre-relocation or post-relocation. So my concern, to speak frankly, is that we are getting a little bit of a hang-up on, well, should this disassembly be permitted to occur at point A or point B? Relocation is permitted under preservation standards. It's not preferred. I think y'all are well aware of that. It's not preferred, but y'all have already granted them the ability to relocate the building. Y'all have already said that this is a suitable relocation site.
It's been approved.
That's been approved. And we know that there, as Glenn just said, we know that there are three different relocation techniques. You can move it intact, which I understand is likely the preferred method, but you can also do the partial disassembly or the total disassembly. But what we have is you've already approved the relocation. Which method they choose, as you've heard staff state about the UDO, that is a applicant decision, like with most construction techniques, because things are going to happen on the ground, on the site. If something needs to change, and there's a process that needs to change, and there was nothing in the February approval that conditioned it on a intact relocation. And I think the other aspect of this is the disassembly. The applicant and staff and the building code officials have all said to a limited extent that there needs to be a disassembly of this project in order to bring this up to code. You've heard it from the applicant. You've heard it from staff that they, in their staff report, that they're in agreement with that there needs to be some disassembly. So ultimately, the applicant is still moving forward with the relocation. But what they have modified is, after meeting with staff and the building code officials about what needs to be done to the building to bring it to the condition they want it to be in for the potential use that they plan, they are going to have to disassemble. And rather than trying to move a structure intact to then later disassemble it in the new location, they will go ahead and disassemble and then relocate. That's the proposal that they're submitting. And I doing just a little bit of my own research, and this was from a HUD publication, that, you know, it's oftentimes more expensive to do that disassembly. If a preservation, most folks, when they're doing the relocation, are going to try to do the intact because that is substantially cheaper and more cost-effective than doing a full cataloged total disassembly like is being proposed by the applicant. This sort of, you know, extensive cataloging, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe is being done with the Joyner House, the
But the
complete.
Joyner House, you couldn't even walk through.
Well, it's still about relocating. It's about that relocation that has been permitted. So it's whether,
But why can't they pick it up and move it?
well, I don't think that they've said that they can't pick it up and move it. It's, we're going to have to disassemble we're going to have to disassemble it.
Right, so why?
Why are they going
And
to have
that
to
may not be
disassemble?
under our decision, but if we've already approved for them to relocate it, then why are we here tonight?
Well, the finished product is it's what the finished product will look like. And that's why you're here. They're relocating it. That's been approved. So what you're here for is the COPA HD, the criteria that y'all have there, but it's the finished product. So, and I think we, understandably, because this is not an issue that I think Bluffton's had to deal with before, at least not in my experience, of something where you're doing this
Well, it will be now.
disassembly.
I mean, the Joyner House set the precedent, that's why we're here. I mean, all of anytime,
Everyone stands on
they're all
its own.
gonna
I
do.
think every property,
Completely different.
It is,
yeah,
because this
everyone
building
stands on its
is
own.
intact and
Again, I think, I understand the commission's concerns. I think everybody in this room understands the commission's concerns. That, you know, there's a preferred intact, y'all would prefer that the building be moved intact, and then what's done at the site is done at the site. And that kind of maintains a level of consistency that y'all feel is needed.
in this case.
And
It's an opinion, it's a preferred is besides the other two elements. So it's just like any other, this is my opinion, this is your opinion. So what is going to get the end result that has a structure that's going to last for many, many, many more years, that's up to code, that's gonna maintain itself in hurricane or severe weather or whatever element gets thrown at it. You know, we're talking about, as we're looking at this box, we also have to probably realize that the roof is gonna have to be removed, because I'm sure that the roofing and, you know, the roofing structure and everything else as you,
Yeah, there's nothing to support that. I mean, those are
if to meet
hypotheticals.
code, to meet code, and that's where the whole
That's a
point that.
hypothetical. We don't know that the roof needs to be taken off and I mean, if so, I would like to know.
And frankly, in looking at the criteria, when you look at your COFA HD, that's not really
Right.
within y'all's.
So what we're gonna.
That's not really approved, but we're looking at just approving
This will
those
be
three
the
elements.
exception and then in 6
One of
months
those
we'll
three
go
things.
and fix it so that this doesn't happen again.
It's analyzing this application, the application that's before you, and you've already approved the relocation. Analyzing this application and then underneath the I believe it's 8 criteria of the UDO. And y'all have heard me preach on this many times. Findings of fact, conclusions of law. It is imperative that the applicant, that staff, that all the public knows why the decisions are being reached. And you have staff and the applicant in agreement on this case, in this particular application. I think you've heard from staff why they're in agreement, and you've heard from the applicant why they think this is necessary. Again, I understand your concerns, I appreciate your concerns and where your hesitation may lie, but if there's anything I can answer or any sort of clarification I can provide, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Do you have anything to?
I mean, I'll just say with this, I mean, just so we can get to a vote, I think. With this not being able to look at the relocation of this structure, I don't have a reason why I would approve it if I'm not able to look at the relocation.
The new plans. Is that what you mean?
I've got following, I've got asking.
What I'm hearing from staff is that relocation has been, has already been approved by this board, by this, and we're not able to look at that, you know, again, or to, I'm not allowed to apply, you know, the Secretary of Interior standards of rehabilitation to the relocation, and if that's the case, then I would have to approve this application.
And I think that's, we thankfully we have the UDO administrator here tonight with us, and Ms. Collin, but if you look at the staff report, I think that was the determination that staff made and that the UDO administrator made, that relocation has been approved. Nothing in this application should act as an amendment of that or modification, that in staff's opinion, the relocation is the relocation. It's been approved. The method is not
February
changed.
2nd by a 6 unanimous vote.
I believe so.
That was my mistake, for voting for that. Because I would not have put that in there, you could take it all apart and put it back together, but that's my mistake.
It was voted though, so we.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So we are where we're at today to move forward for what we're trying to get accomplished now. You know, we could all be Monday morning quarterbacks, but right now we're trying to move forward on what we have presented to us today, and that's what we have to concentrate on, not from what was in the past.
Correct, and nothing in the UDO states that it is prohibited. As he just stated, there are 3 different ways. Who are we to tell them which way that they can remove or move this structure? If it's allowed, why prohibit them?
Reassembly, yeah.
Correct.
Where, how does it reassemble? Yeah.
And I know, and we've talked about this before in the past too. You look at your secretary standards, there are hundreds of pages and tons of additional material, and even the secretary standards don't really address relocation in any depth at all. And our UDO is not, in particular, historic district standards are not hundreds of pages. They're much shorter, they're much more concise, and they're supposed to be understandable and supposed to be able to work through them. And I think this is one of those areas where we may need to talk about it in the future. If this is a continuing concern of the HPC, and that's within your jurisdiction to bring that to staff, to talk about UDO amendments.
At an appropriate time.
Kevin, you know, for,
Sorry, I just tried to be a little bit, the microphone could pick me up just to be a little bit more organized. Come up here. We have strategic planning coming up in a little bit over a month, and I know historic preservation and contributing structures is a topic of discussion with town council. So we bring forward UD amendments all the time, so we can workshop that. Like I said, I know we're talking about contributing structures and just how to
so
approach
can
them.
we get invited to that meeting, and
You
can we as a
will be
body,
invited to that, yes.
can we as a body contribute to what,
Yes, you will be.
forward?
Correct, you will be invited, as the chairperson, you will, and it's a public meeting, so you're all encouraged to attend. But, you know, there's obviously other ways
Do
to
we
do
have
that so
ability to
close that
put-
that's
do we
just a
have-
couple weeks away, so it's good timing.
Do we have ability to give you input?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Is there any discussion, Carrie?
I guess we're just trying to decide if it can be done either way. It can physically be moved and then, okay, take the siding off, fix it, do whatever, piece by piece. Do it that way, or let them take it apart and rebuild it. Is essentially what we're trying to decide.
The applicant is asking for them to do
The second.
the second, which, you know, going through the process, I guess, I'm looking at,
But is it, if you,
I guess I don't I know that there's a feeling that we're not preserving this box, but we are preserving this box. We're just preserving it in a different manner, and I guess I see that there's going to be this building that no one's, it's going to if we were hearing, it's still gonna be a piece of art, because it's still going to have the same exterior structure, or not structure, but material, and look, and design, and windows, and roofs, and everything else. It's,
If I may, I mean, I would just say this after being at the last meeting. I mean, to me, not, if I cannot take into relocation of the structure, I think my questions have been answered, and I would, unless there's further discussion, like to do a vote. I do think there needs to be additional conversation, but not on the applicant's time, I guess.
we're always, if somebody wants to submit a motion, that's fine. If there's a proposed motion, let's see, Glenn, did you have something
So
that
screen?
you could provide? Thank you. Here we go.
So, I would like to make a motion to approve the application with staff conditions, with all of staff conditions. For staff condition number 2, find that the powder-coated aluminum railings and balusters are an acceptable deviation in permitted materials. That's my motion.
Second, do we have any further discussion? No further discussion? Looking for a vote, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
2 nays, 3 approved, or 3 yays, so that means it's a 3-2 vote, and so that means it's approved.
Thank you.
Let's see, that is our final item on the agenda, is that correct?
That's right.
Except I just want to mention that Glenn helped out in the recent Historic Foundation soiree, and he was serving food and picking up tables and being a butler and helping the
I
soiree.
started leaving as a bartender.
But also providing the additional help, and I believe we raised quite a bit of money for the Historic Foundation
Yes, we did.
and the Rotary. So thank you, Glenn, and I believe Katie was also there. So I just wanted to note that, staff is pitching in, so thank you, staff.
Thank you.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.